Drew Doughty's big week continues, and the LA Kings win in their first game out of the break. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. The LA Kings were back in action after 2 weeks off of the Four Nations face-off, starting a 3-game homestand against the Utah Hockey Club, game 54 of the 82-game regular season. Kings were coming off a 2-1 shootout loss in their last game. That was at home against the Ducks. That was the last game before the break back on February the 8th. As for the Kings lineup in their game against Utah, they would be sticking with the 11-7 setup with the 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. We'll talk a little bit more on that coming up. The forward lines were what we're used to. Anze Kopitar centering the top line with Adrian Kempe and Alex Turcotte. Philip Deneau centering the second line with Warren Foegele and Trevor Moore. Quentin Byfield centering the third line with Alex Ferrier and Kevin Fiala. And Trevor Lewis centering the fourth line with Tanner Jeannot. And there would be a rotating other third forward, Akil Thomas, the lone forward the Kings have that would not dress for this one. As for the defense, Mikey Anderson activated off injured reserve. He would play in his familiar spot on the top pairing alongside Vladislav Gavrikov. Joel Edmondson and Drew Doughty would be the second pairing. So Doughty sliding down to that second pairing after playing most of the time on the top pairing on his comeback after the ankle surgery or the ankle fracture. Jacob Moverara and Jordan Spence would be the third pairing, and Brant Clark would be the extra defender. Kyle Burrows, the lone defenseman that the Kings would not dress out. Darcy Kemper in net, and David Riddick would serve as the backup. And good to see Darcy back after missing the Kings last game due to personal reasons. So what was the big question going into this game for me? Pretty easy. Would the Kings look good after 2 weeks off? Would they be rusty? Would they be rested? How are they going to look? As for the game summary in this one, Kings would fall behind 1-0 after Utah scored on a power play, but LA would respond just 38 seconds later. Drew Doughty scoring his first goal of the season on a slap shot. We were tied at 1 after 1. Second period, Utah would score again on the power play to reclaim a 2-1 lead, but the Kings would respond with a power play goal of their own, Kevin Fiala's 22nd of the year. And then it would be Alex Ferrier scoring for the LA Kings on a breakaway. That would make it 3-2 Kings, and that's where we would be after 2 periods for Alex Ferrier, his 15th goal on the season. Into the third period, it would be Trevor Lewis scoring on a rebound. The Utah native scoring against the Utah Hockey Club for Trevor Lewis, his 4th goal of the season. That made it 4-2. Utah would respond. Barrett Hayton scoring his 3rd goal of the game. So he scored all 3 goals for Utah. That would make it 4-3. But Mikey Anderson would put it into an empty net with 1:30 to go. And that would ice the game for Mikey, his 6th goal of the season. Final score, Kings 5, Utah 3. With that win, LA improved to 30-17-7 on the year, 18-3-2 at home, and now 1-0 on this 3-game homestand to start the second half, if you will. Not the second half of the season, but the second portion of the season, the stretch drive towards the playoffs after this Four Nations face-off break. As for the game stats in this one, Kings lead where it matters most on the scoreboard with a 5-3 victory. Shots on goal favored Utah 28-26. Power plays, Utah was 2 for 2. The Kings were 1 for 2. Face-offs 1 favored Utah 38-26. Hits favored the Kings 24-20, and block shots favored LA 23-20. So what was good for the Kings from a team standpoint in this win over Utah? Well, very balanced scoring. The Kings getting 2 goals from defensemen. They got a goal from a fourth line player. Nice to see 5 different players lighting the lamp for the Kings. Nice to see the Kings looking good on a power play. They really just had the one power play, moved the puck around quickly, scored pretty easily. We'll tell you who and why and how coming up a little bit as far as the details on that power play goal. We mentioned this on Thursday's show. The Kings power play has been much better at home than compared to the road where it's been dreadful. So we saw a little bit of evidence of that in the win on Saturday. Good to see the Kings answer back quickly after Utah scored twice to take leads. The Kings answered right back. And the team defense was still pretty good for the Kings. No clear break-ins or breakaways, no odd man rushes of really any note for Utah. There was one time where they kind of had a rush in. Drew Doughty ended up taking a penalty on that one. But overall, still some pretty good team defense for the Kings, getting in shooting lanes, getting in passing lanes, breaking up things with their sticks, things like that. What was not so good for the Kings from a team standpoint? Well, I don't know if it was rust or the Kings just weren't that good, but clearing pucks out of their own zone on several occasions they weren't great at. I thought Utah kind of beat the Kings of their own game a little bit. They weren't, as we mentioned, getting a lot of rushes, but they did have some pretty good zone time. And on several occasions, I thought that they did do a good job of getting bodies and pucks toward the net. The Kings could have done a bit better job around their own net in this one. And the Kings penalty kill, which has been so good all year, certainly not up to their standards in this one, with Utah scoring twice on 2 power play opportunities. Our coach's quote from head coach Jim Hiller on this win in their first game back after the Four Nations face-off. Jim Hiller said this, quote, "I didn't think the execution was great. That was the concern, but we skated really well early. Then we kind of were hanging on. They didn't give us much through the first 2 periods. Third period, they were better than us, and we were hanging on a bit. But listen, we'll take it. We're not going to overanalyze it. First one out of the gate, we won the game, we'll take it. We weren't bad, but we're always wanting more," is what head coach Jim Hiller had to say. And that's pretty much my big takeaway from this win as well. The Kings played good enough. It wasn't great. It wasn't the cleanest game as far as execution. There were some mistakes, but the energy was overall pretty good. I think overall the Kings were the better team, but not by a lot. Maybe a little rust for the Kings in this one. But of course, Utah had the same number of games off as well. So then maybe they were a little rusty as well. But overall, good to get 2 points in the first game back. And now the execution is going to have to be better going forward with 2 big games coming up, Monday against Vegas and Wednesday against Vancouver. And we're going to update where the Kings are in the standings in relation to both the Golden Knights and the Canucks, who were both in action on Saturday night as well. All right, up next, we're going to get into some of the individual performances for the Kings and their win over Utah. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. FanDuel's live betting feature keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three-pointer. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk about some individual performances for the LA Kings and their win over Utah. And as we do every time after a game for the Kings, we start with the man who was in net, and that would be Darcy Kuemper. And again, good to see Darcy back after missing that last Kings game due to personal reasons. Hopefully everything's taken care of with that. That said, I did think that he looked in particular rusty in this game. His first game since beating Montreal back on February the 5th. I thought his rebound control was not up to his normal standards. The first goal he allowed was a backhand shot on goal, and then a deflection in front. The Utah player kind of deflected it right as Kemper was kind of going for a poke check. He might have got a piece of it as well, and then it just fluttered past him and into the net. Not a great goal allowed, but kind of a fluky goal as well. Second goal was a point shot that Kemper made a toe save on. The rebound went right to the Utah player who was sitting at the doorstep. He taps it in easily. Both those first two goals were with the Kings shorthanded. So you can make the argument that that player isn't all alone on the side at the side of the net for a tap in if the Kings are at full strength. But it was not Darcy Kemper's best game, but a good enough game, good enough to get the win. As Darcy Kemper improved to 16-6-6 on the season and 8-1-1 on home ice. Drew Doughty. Drew picking up right where you left off, playing so well in the Four Nations faceoff. He had a goal and 2 assists in this one. He scored the Kings' first goal of the game, a big-time slap shot from the point. Nice shot with some traffic in front on that one. Also had a point shot that went off the post as well early on. Had a flip out of the zone that resulted in a breakaway for Alex Laferriere, who he scored on. We'll talk about that more. Although afterwards, Drew Doughty did admit that he didn't even see Laferriere. He was just flipping it out of the zone because, as he said in his own words, he was gassed and was looking to get off on a line change. But Doughty also had a secondary assist on the Kevin Fiala power play. Doughty said afterwards that he told Joel Edmondson that he really liked playing with him. And we mentioned this, if you recall, during the show that we did on the Lunch with Luke episode, where Luke Robitaille said in that luncheon with season ticket holders that I got to be a part of, that the Kings were looking to play Drew Doughty on the second pairing and keep Gavrikov and Mikey Anderson together. And that was something we all kind of wondered about. And Jim Hiller was playing Doughty on the top pairing and playing him a ton of minutes right after he came back from recovering from the ankle issue. And it left us all kind of scratching our heads a little bit because he wasn't easy in back into the lineup, that's for sure. And maybe it was not a big deal that he was playing on the top pairing, but the number of minutes he was playing was kind of alarming. Now, maybe Hiller was trying to do Doughty a solid by getting him a ton of minutes and trying to get him ready to be selected and to play in that Four Nations faceoff because he knew how badly Drew Doughty wanted to play in that event. So maybe that's why he was doing that. But on Saturday, Drew Doughty was on that second pairing, and the Kings played 7 defensemen. So Drew didn't play the typical 25 minutes a night, a little bit less than that, 21 minutes and 40 seconds. I think around 20 minutes is perfect for Drew. I would rather not see him playing the 25 minutes that we had saw before the Four Nations break. You had Vladislav Gavrikov playing 22 minutes, Joel Edmondson and Mikey Anderson also, along with Drew Doughty, playing 21 minutes. So I like that mix of pretty even distribution of time played between the top 4 defensemen for the Kings, especially if you're playing 7 defensemen. There's no need for any of your defensemen to be playing 25 minutes, I don't believe. As far as Drew Doughty using the Four Nations faceoff to get ready for the stretch drive for the LA Kings, Doughty said afterwards, quote, "When I first came back, I'm not going to lie, I was lacking a little bit of confidence because I wasn't playing the way I wanted to play. Making that team," talking about Team Canada, gave that to me. And I then proved it to myself that I could still play with those big boys. It made me feel really good about myself. And now I'm back here excited to go on this playoff stretch, end quote. That was Kings defenseman Drew Doughty. And we've talked about that on this show. Really liked the way Drew played in the Four Nations faceoff for Canada. Thought that he could use that positive experience and the positive way that he played to carry forward with the LA Kings the rest of the way. And it certainly looked like that was the case for Drew Doughty in that first game against Utah. Wanted to mention Kevin Fiala. And I think one of the concerns that I had about the Four Nations faceoff, in addition to, any potential injury to our guys that were playing in it, but was Kevin Fiala going to cool off after playing some of his best hockey of the season, a couple of weeks before we went on the break? Well, it doesn't appear that that's the case, at least not after one game. Scored the Kings' power play goal in this one, just an absolute blast on a one-timer from the right faceoff dot. So that was great to see him get right back in and score a big goal. Fiala also had the primary assist on Drew Doughty's goal, just a soft little saucer pass from point to point over to Doughty, right in his wheelhouse. It was so slow he could just wind up and blast it. I thought Fiala also had a really good scoring chance at the end of the first period. He also hit a post on a beautiful backhand shot in the second period. So Fiala was active, had energy, had good scoring opportunities, and was able to score on one of them. On the season now, Kevin Fiala has 22 goals, 15 assists for 37 points. Alex Laferriere played with a ton of energy, scored a beautiful backhand goal on the breakaway that was the one that was flipped out of the zone from Drew Doughty. Showed great hustle and anticipation on that play. He was flying all over the ice all night. Also had a hand maybe in Drew Doughty's goal. He was in front of the net, providing some traffic. Laferriere finished with a goal and a team-high 3 shots on goal. And the Byfield line, Quentin Byfield, Alex Laferriere, Kevin Fiala, that was the Kings' best line in the win over Utah. We've talked about it, how important it is for that line to be good down the stretch. If they can be effective, if they can provide offense, the Kings, they're going to be that much tougher to beat. So that line was very, very good in the win over Utah. A lot of energy, and Alex Laferriere looked really, really good in this game. Trevor Lewis scored what turned out to be the game-winning goal on a rebound putback off a Jordan Spence point shot. Lewis also almost scored early on a Drew Doughty point shot that he deflected and it went off the post, but always nice to get a goal from one of your fourth liners like Trevor Lewis. Brent Clark, I did want to mention that he ended up being a bit of the odd man out as the 7th defenseman, but I talked about the Kings and how balanced the minutes were for the top 4. The same can't really be said for the other 3 defensemen, especially Clark, who only played 7 shifts and 5 minutes and 15 total seconds of ice time. That was compared to 15 shifts and over 12 minutes each for both Jordan Spence and Jacob Moverara. When it was pointed out afterwards, the head coach Jim Hiller, he said on Clark playing so little, quote, "It's hard with 7D. It's hard to balance the minutes with 7D because unfortunately one guy is there as a support, and depending on how the game plays out, there's just different things that can happen within the game. Sometimes the downside of 7 is that you play one guy too much. Then you play somebody else, and now you've got 2 guys, maybe 3, that are out there off or in their rhythm, and it becomes, okay, who's going to be better? You want the one guy in a better rhythm than the other guy. Tonight, it just worked out. Tonight, it just the way it shook out," end quote. So, certainly I understand that Brent Clark is going to be getting less minutes now that he's not playing in the top 4. But I do think that Jim Hiller and his staff need to do a better job of giving Brent Clark more than just 5 minutes of ice time, even if he is the 7th defenseman. That should be a little bit more even. So we'll see if that's the case going forward. Do want to check on the team leaders for the Kings in their win over Utah. 4 Kings players had multi-point nights, led by Drew Doughty's 3 points. Kevin Fiala, Philip Deneau, Joel Edmondson each had 2 points. Drew Doughty was a +3, while Quentin Byfield and Joel Edmondson were each a +2. Alex Laferriere led the Kings in shots on goal with 3. Tanner Jeannot led the Kings in hits with 5. Drew Doughty and Vladislav Gavrikov tied for the team lead in block shots. Each of them had 4. And Gavrikov led the Kings in time on ice, 22 minutes and 27 seconds. I did want to mention Sean Durzi because I know sometimes fans are interested in former Kings players, how they're doing. And the Kings' former defenseman was only playing in his 5th game of the season for Utah in this one as he returned from injury where he's missed most of the year. He did have an assist in the loss against the Kings, his old team, giving him 3 assists and 3 points on the season. He did upset some of his former teammates. He had a late shot on goal after the whistle in the 3rd period, and the Kings did not like that one bit. Went after him a little bit, but all in all, Sean Durzi, just happy, I'm sure, for him to be back on the ice and getting to play after having a tough season so far due to injury. All right, coming up next, our 3 stars of the game for the Kings, plus where are the Kings now in the Pacific Division standings? That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything, and it's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, or the Stanley Cup final. Same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million, no medical exam required. And if it's more affordable than you think, you can also get $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. All right. It is always fun to give out our 3 stars of the game because that means that the Kings won. We don't do it when they lose. And some pretty good candidates, but in the end, I thought the 3 stars that I selected were the top 3 that definitely deserved it. So our 3 stars for the win over Utah. Our 3rd star is going to be Alex Ferrier. Again, loved his energy all night long, flying all over the ice, scored a huge goal, and he looked great. Our 2nd star is his line mate, Kevin Fiala, also scoring a big power play goal for the Kings. Thought Kevin might cool off after the break. Doesn't look like the case, at least for one game. But no question, the number 1 star is Kings defenseman Drew Doughty with his 3-point night, scoring his first goal of the year as well, looking good coming back from that Four Nations face-off where he played well and won gold with Canada. So again, Alex Ferrier, the 3rd star, Kevin Fiala, the 2nd star, and Drew Doughty, your number 1 star in the win over Utah. All right, checking the Pacific Division standings. Good news, bad news for the Kings. We'll start with the bad news first. The Kings did not gain any ground on Vegas as the Golden Knights also won on Saturday. Matter of fact, that win moved Vegas back into first place in the Pacific Division. They're 7 points up on the Kings and now 2 points up on the Edmonton Oilers, who lost on Saturday. So that means, or if the playoffs started today, which they don't, but if they did, we would be facing the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of the playoffs. The good news, though, is that the Golden Knights beat the Vancouver Canucks 3-1. That means the Kings' lead over Vancouver for the 3rd spot in the Pacific Division is now at 4 points. While we have a moment, I want to let you know that the Ontario Reign also played Saturday night. Unfortunately, they did not win as the Kings did, losing 3-1 to the San Jose Barracuda. The Reign trailed 1-0 after the second period, and the lone goal scored was by Martin Chromiak in the final seconds to spoil the San Jose shutout, his 11th of the season for Chromiak. Phoenix Copley took the loss in net, allowing 3 goals on 24 shots. So again, the Reign losing to San Jose 3-1 and falling to 30-15-3 on the season. The Reign right now are in a 3-way tie for the most points in the Pacific Division with the Colorado Eagles and Calgary Wranglers. Each of those teams 63 points on the season. The Kings are off until Monday. They've got that big game coming up against Vegas. But there will be a game Sunday at Crypto.com Arena. It's the Skate for LA Strong benefit hockey game. Some of the celebrities playing include Steve Carell and Justin Bieber. As far as some of the players playing, you got Jeff Carter, Rob Blake, Jared Stoll, Mark Messier, Jeremy Roenick. The celebrity coaches will feature Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, and Snoop Dogg. The game is at 3 p.m. LA time on Sunday at Crypto.com Arena, and you can watch the game in a variety of places: ESPN2, ESPN Plus, True TV, FanDuel Sports Network, and KCAL 9. So lots of options for you to check out that celebrity game, Skate for LA Strong benefit game, 3 p.m. on Sunday at Crypto.com Arena. And one final bit of Kings news before we close out the show. The NHL made it official on Saturday as Los Angeles will be the host city for the 2025 NHL draft coming up June 27th and June 28th. And before I sign off, I did want to mention something I shared earlier in the week, but in case somehow you missed it and didn't hear, I was informed by management that I will not be allowed to do a 7-day-a-week show anymore, which we started a couple weeks ago. Even though my total work hours per week would be under 40, California law says if someone works 7 days a week, they have to be paid overtime. And unfortunately, but not surprisingly, the powers that be at Locked On do not want to have to pay me overtime, which I understand. So I have been instructed that I can do the show 6 days a week, but I will have to take off 1 day a week. So going forward, we will be doing a show Monday through Saturday, and we will not record a show on Sunday going forward. For you everydayers, those of you who listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Monday, we are going to recap that big game against the Vegas Golden Knights. We will record it after the conclusion of the game, so it'll be a late night recording on Monday, just like we had a late night recording on Saturday into Sunday. If you want to send an email to the show, we always encourage that for our Friday fan feedback shows. The email address, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, and you are always welcome to post your thoughts on each show if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. Love to stay interactive with the show on social media. Follow us on X, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings, go.